Thanks, Simon. So before anyone is tempted to throw rotten tomatoes at the New Zealand Registered Dietitian, I'm actually one of the good ones, in this forum anyway. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my journey as an LCHF dietitian. I know I'm at risk of putting up a really corny slide, however it's not corn. It's not corn. But why I like it is because it accurately depicts my journey as an LCHF dietitian. So I'd like to start off at the seed. So it all started for me at the end of about 2012 when my research team at AUT came across this other information. And to be specific, it was old Scoey here who made a lot of noise about it. So, you know, as a practicing dietitian for almost 20 years, I was certainly not going to go, okay, righto, let's change what we're doing. Great, let's get into it. It's just not me. So I thought the only way that I was actually going to get to the bottom of this was to read and to find out for myself. So what I did was I looked into the literature, and there's a lot of literature, and I'd like to think that I picked some of the key pieces of literature. So I read that, and I also went to look for the literature that I could take to Grant and say, you're not right, mate. You're not a dietitian. I'm a dietitian, and we need whole grains. So I looked for that literature, and sadly, I didn't find any. So the guidelines and the validation for our current Ministry of Health guidelines simply wasn't there, and that to me was horrific. And in retrospect, it was kind of embarrassing to be living by those guidelines for so many years without questioning them or looking for the evidence. Something else that I found in my literature travels, in my World Wide Web travels, was this underground movement, so to speak, of people, of well-qualified people, of well-respected people that were all doing LCHF. But the interesting thing to me was that all these people had a personal story to tell. Some of them had been obese, they'd lost weight, type 1 diabetes, pre-diabetes, chronic inflammatory conditions. Everyone had a story to tell. So my story tops that, because my story is that I don't actually have a story. I am one of those slim, metabolically well-regulated dietitians that was referred to earlier. I picked my parents well, and I can eat carbohydrates and be fine. So what's the personal investment for me? And I guess the personal investment for me was simply two things. Firstly, it was just logical. It was absolutely logical, and that's what made me change, amongst a whole other host of reasons. It seemed logical to me, and also it just seemed like a way better way of eating unprocessed whole foods. It seemed logical. So I went from the standard food pyramid person or dietitian to the more whole food type of pyramid that was low in carbohydrate, moderate in protein, high in fat. So the next part of my journey was, the slight growth of that seed, and I thought, what am I going to do with this? Well, clearly I'm going to test this out on my clients in my practice. And I have to be honest, that first consultation where I told someone to now buy full cream milk instead of, low-fat milk, my hair stood on end. It just did not feel good at all. I was really nervous about that. And it's probably only after a couple of months of doing it, after seeing some good results, thank goodness, I actually felt comfortable with doing it, and of course, the butter, the cream, and all those other things, entered my fridge as well, which was massive. So some of my client outcomes, I mean, this stuff is not new to a lot of you who are either doing it or have heard about it, or have clients that are doing it too. So from simple weight loss right through to comments like their skin has completely cleared up, less bloating. At the end of last year, we did a multi-sport study, a case study at AUT, and the reason why we did this is because I went away with some of my mountain biking mates, And I couldn't stop talking about this. So they approached me and they said, we want to try this out. I'm going, really? You are multi-sporters. You want to drop your carbohydrates from really up there to under 50 to get into ketosis? They said, bring it on. This is what it's all about. So they came in, and while there was actually no performance benefit, and we were expecting no performance benefit because it was strictly under 50 grams. We didn't get into the carb cycling or the next stage of that case study research. But what we found was completely unexpected outcomes of some of these people, ranging from clearer skin, as I said, reduced inflammatory conditions, improved recovery. But I guess that one of the more interesting ones was one of our participants had prostate issues for years, enlarged prostate, and he tried everything. And since he went on the ketogenic diet, his prostate issues just picked themselves up and took themselves out of his life. And that, to me, I found was just staggering, really. The reason why I put the picture up here is because this article features in the recent edition of the North and South magazine that we have on the shelf. So if you want to know a little bit more about it, you can certainly go there and have a read. There's one story that I want to tell, and this is a client of mine, and he's a friend of mine too. We'll call him John, which is quite fitting because his name is actually John. And John has an interesting story. On your left, that's his classic before photo. And John used to be 130 kgs, and he's constantly trying to regulate his weight. He had high blood pressure, couldn't be bothered taking meds because he just couldn't be bothered. And admittedly, he dropped from 130 to 100 kgs using standard high carb, low fat, and he kept that off for 2 years. So that was pretty good. Take my hat off to him. Really good discipline there. However, he exercised like a demon, and he was constantly hungry and a bit sick of it, really. So when he came to me about a year ago. Been working with him for about a year. He's dropped 20 kg. This is his after photo on your right. He wasn't so keen to stand in Speedos and spray himself with self-tan for his after photo, but I thought that did a great job of just looking at a before and after photo. Now, some of you practitioners in the room might think that this is not a remarkable story. Everyone's got a story like this to tell. But I want to just extend the story and tell you something which just was completely profound to me. John had an ankle issue, and he's had it for quite a long time. It's been operated on a couple of times. Before he came to see me, him and his partner went down to do the Morangi cycle track, a mountain bike track a little bit down south. It's a monster. You should all do it if you're mountain bikers. But John did something to his ankle and flared it up. So when he came to see me, he could hardly walk. And he said, look, I don't want to exercise. I can't exercise. I'm in too much pain, so talk to me about diet only. And I was quite happy to do that. I said, great, another test, bring it on. Let's talk diet only. So over a year, he's lost 20 kg. Now, you might not think that's particularly good. I think it's great. I did say to him, however, I do think it's worthwhile getting your ankle sorted out, because exercise is an independent health benefit for lots of things, so you need to check it out. So he went to his surgeon, and his surgeon gave him a couple of options. His surgeon said, well, we can operate on it, and there's no guarantee, or of course we can chop it off. So he came to see me, and I said, John, how did it go at the surgeon? And he said, I actually think I'm going to pursue one of his options, but it's not going to be the surgical option. So he was considering having his leg amputated because it was in such pain, and he absolutely had a gutsful. And I was absolutely floored. I thought he was joking. I kind of laughed, and then I realized that he was serious. So John, don't do anything rash. Just get on LCHF, and you'll see what happens. So fast forward 12 months and 20 kgs later, and I just caught up with John last week and said, how are you going? And he said that his ankle is hardly an issue. It's hardly bothering him. He's still not doing a lot of exercise, He's doing a bit of mountain biking, what he loves, but still not doing a lot. But he is a different person, and of course he's not considering that option anymore with his surgeon. So I just found that that was the remarkable part of the story, and I just wanted to share that with you. Things to consider in my practice. Look, you know, in 15 minutes, it doesn't do justice. There are lots of things to consider and lots of challenges, because not everyone gets results, and not everyone stops eating when they're feeling full. People eat for lots of different reasons. So things to consider, the individual responses of people is really, really important. And I think the level of carbohydrate restriction is really important too. So if somebody comes to you or comes to me and they're eating 300-400 grams of carbs, and I want to stick them into ketosis, the timing has got to be right, because the first week or two they probably will feel absolutely shocking. So there are some issues that we need to consider about the appropriate level of carbohydrate restriction and the appropriate timing. But I do believe that every single person can benefit from carbohydrate restriction, which naturally lends itself to higher fat intake, because otherwise you'll starve. So the challenges are, of course, LCHF could end up HCHF, high carb, high fat, or otherwise known as the standard American diet or the SAD diet. And I've had really intelligent clients going on this, coming back a few weeks later, having put on weight, going, I've gone high fat, low carb. And then when you talk to them, they actually haven't. They've gone high fat, but they haven't dropped the carbs. And that is a recipe for disaster. So, translating the message, you need to do it very, very carefully, because people pick up what they want to hear. I find communicating the story about bloods to people incredibly challenging. So firstly, my consultation is now a whole lot longer. I'm always running over time. Because to say to people that their total cholesterol might come up and their LDL might come up too, but that's okay, don't worry about it, because your triglycerides and HDL are far more important. Can we expect people to take a dietitian's advice over their trusty GP? That's very, very difficult. So that's a challenge that I'm faced with and working my way through. And plateaus, of course, which are tricky. And people who have been metabolically dysregulated and metabolically challenged with diets over the years, sometimes they find that they drop a bit of weight, they plateau, and they still want to lose more weight, and they just need to be patient and rejig until they get the results. Right, finally, the last bit of growth with this is working with dietitians. So if this is going to be my mission in my career, I'll happily take it on. So before I sold myself to the LCHF devil, I went to the Code of Ethics for Dietitians and just had a wee look. And under the role of the New Zealand dietitian, I came across this statement. The aim of dietetic practice is to promote positive health outcomes through optimal nutrition. The dietitian is a reflective practitioner, lifelong learner, continually critiquing his or her own performance and improving their standards of practice. It's precisely what I'm doing. And just to carry on for that, in the ethical guidelines, number 1, professional competence, the first guideline is the practice of dietetics is informed by evidence and management principles. That's exactly what I'm doing. So the evidence speaks for itself, and unfortunately the lack of evidence for our current dietary guidelines makes these guidelines in relation to current practice a bit of a mockery. So, in fact, I've got a colleague dietitian. He's a newbie. He's just come out of dietetics, that is. And he's been writing, he's been making a little bit of noise because this makes sense to him too. And he told me last week that one of his colleague dietitians said that they were going to report him to the dietitians board because he's bringing the reputation of the dietitians down. So I kindly told him that I'm happy to fight that battle with him, and so we'll see where that goes. So finally, I just want to say that more than a year ago, I was that dietitian. I was that person, and it didn't take me 5 minutes to change my mind. It took me a little bit longer. So I'm happy to work with the dietitians, and I am working with the dietitians. I'll continue to work with them, and I really do believe that we'll see change because we're starting to see some good change already. Thank you.
I'd like to make this public.